In the next 3 videos, I'm going to show you how to create this motion graphic sports bumper entirely in a free 3D app called Blender. All 3 parts of this course are available on our YouTube channel. Part 1, which is the video that you're watching right now, is all about modeling. Part 2 is the next video, and it's going to be all about lighting and materials. And the very last part, part 3, is all about animation and compositing. All right, so let's get started by modeling an LED panel. So this is what Blender looks like when you first open it up. We get this default camera, default cube, and this default light. And you can see all of these objects in this outliner. And this outliner has a collection that all of these objects are in. Now, this collection has 3 things in it. We're gonna select this cube and click and drag and move it out of there. So now we have only camera and light inside of it. So we're gonna double click on this collection. We're gonna call it camera and light. Okay. So now we can turn things off, on, very handy. So this cube right here will turn into an LED panel, and then we're gonna take it and duplicate it 7 more times. So we'll have 8 of them all together. So we're gonna double click on this cube and we're gonna call this one LED panel 0.001. So it's gonna be our first LED panel. And right now it's kind of floating by itself, and we do need to put it in some kind of a collection. So we're gonna select this, press M to move it into a new collection. We're gonna call it LED panels, because it's going to have all 8 of them. So press OK. So now we only have 1. So let's start modeling our LED panel. So we're going to select this cube, go into edit mode. You can do it a number of different ways. You can either go to the upper left corner here. Right now we are in object mode, but you can click on it and select this edit mode. When you do that, we are in edit mode. You can go back to object mode the same way. Now, what I do like to use is just a simple keyboard shortcut. You select this, press tab on your key, and now you are in edit mode. Now to get out of it, to go back into object mode, just press tab again, and you are in object mode. So let's go back into edit mode, tab, and then right now we are in edit mode, and you have 3 options in here. You can either work with vertices, click on vertices, select one, move them around, you can do it that way. You can also adjust edges, the same concept, move them around, and faces. Now, you don't want to be traveling all the way to this area to select faces, edges, all that stuff. You can use keyboard shortcuts. It's just by pressing 1, and as you can see, you went to vertices. 2 will get you edges, and 3 will get you faces. So you can quickly shuffle anywhere, right? You don't have to travel. So we're gonna press 3 to go to faces, press A to select all of our faces, and then we're gonna press S to scale. So once you do that, you can see we can scale, click away, and then it stops. And now we have this panel right here, this resize panel. We can just keep adjusting. And by the way, if for some reason you clicked away and you lost it, well, to get it back, just press F9 and you'll get it back. The beautiful thing about this, you can be anywhere, F9, and you'll get it in here. So that's very handy. So we're gonna adjust X. Let's take it up to 1. Y, let's take it down to 0.1. And then Z, let's take it up to 4. So right now we have like a basic shape of our LED panel, and we're gonna select this face right here, the back face, and we're gonna press I to insert a face like this. When you click away, you'll have more options in here. So we're gonna say thickness 0.5, and then depth, we're gonna adjust something like 0.3. So we do have like a basic shape of our LED panel. It looks like a TV. So we're gonna select the front of it, and we're gonna do some more modeling. We're gonna insert a face, press I. We can see we have a new face. You can click away, we can adjust in here. So thickness, let's take it down to 0.01. I just want like a new face and slight gap around it, basically like a TV. So when we put them together, you can tell that they're separate. They're not one thing. It'll make more sense in the future. So we have a basic shape now. I'd also want to add some more detail on the sides. And to do that, I'm gonna press Ctrl R to get the loop cuts. And if you move on your middle mouse, if you scroll it, you can see we can add more loop cuts. So we're gonna do 4 altogether, click twice, and you can adjust it in here if you want, but we're gonna do 4. That's good. So while we have them selected, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna press Ctrl B for bevel, and we can adjust bevel like this. You can set it to width in here. Let's do something like 0.01, and let's see, everything else is good. We have our faces selected. I'm gonna press Alt E to extrude. I guess you can hit E to extrude, but it only extrudes up. But if you press Alt E, you have an option for extrude faces along normals, which is awesome because now it extrudes wherever the face is facing. So that's really handy. So now we can push it back a bit and we can adjust it in here. We can say 0.01, and then we want to do offset even. Make sure that's checked. Okay. So that's it as far as details. You can see it's very basic. I'm gonna hit tab to go back into the object mode. We do have some straight lines here. I wanna bevel them a bit. And to do that, we're going to select a bevel modifier. So we're going to go over here, click on this icon. We're going to add, and we're going to click on this bevel. We clicked on it. As you can see, we have bevel. We're going to go over here to the screen, and we're going to set it to width and also angle. And we're going to add some segments. Let's do like 5 of them. And let's take this down, this width value down to maybe 5. That's probably good. Now, as you can see, it's not very smooth, but we are in object mode. We can just right click and shade smooth. Click on that. You can also go to object somewhere in here. Yeah, shade smooth. One more thing I'd like to do. Let's go and make sure normals. I'm just going to check outer smooth just to be safe for the flat faces. All right, so we have an LED panel and we need 8 more of these. Now to do that, we're just going to use an array modifier. Again, select this. We're going to go to modifiers tab here. And we're going to add a modifier. We're going to click on array. And we're going to make, 8 copies altogether. So as you can see, it's 8. We're going to hit apply. Now here's what happens when you hit apply. It's not like Cinema 4D. When you hit apply, it just kind of like combines them all into one mesh. As you can see, it's just a one mesh. So when you go into edit mode by hitting tab, you can see it's just one mesh. But what if I want to separate them into separate objects? How can I do that quickly? Well, it's actually quite easy to do in Blender. All you have to do, go into edit mode, press P on your keyboard, and right here, we separate by loose parts. So when you do that, boom, it does it for you. So it separates everything. Let's hit tab to go into object mode. And now we have each object separate. But here's a dilemma here. Right now, each object is separate, but if I press R to rotate it, you can see they all rotate around the same origin because they all have the same origin, which is right here, which is the origin of the original LED panel. And that's a problem. So what we want to do, so here's the thing. This is why collections are so cool, because if you put things in collection, if I want to select all of my LED panels, now if I had a bunch of them, I had to select a bunch of them. But because they are in collection, I can just select one and press Shift G and then click on this collection. Boom, it's going to select everything in that collection, which is really handy. So once you have everything selected, next you can either go to object and then click on set origin and then origin to center of mass volume. You can do that right here, or you can just right click and set origin and do the same thing. So just click on it, volume, boom. And when you do that, you can see the origin is at the center of each object. So now I can select this one, press R. You can see it's working quite well. All right, so now that we kind of, got everything figured out, the next step, again, we're going to select one of them, press Shift G to select collection. So select all of them. And then we're going to select this move tool. Now you can, if you don't see this move tool, you want to make sure you either click on this to see all of that, or you can just press T on your keyboard. You can also press Shift spacebar and it'll get you the same options. It's cool because you can go anywhere and do that. So it's very handy. So we're going to select the move tool and then we're going to click on this X-axis. We're going to move on it. And when you press Control on your keyboard, it's going to snap. So we're going to snap to where the green line goes through the center of these. So we have 4 to the right and 4 to the left. Okay. Then we're going to do the same thing for Z. Click on it, move it up, press Control to snap it until it hits the floor. So that's the position of our LED panels. All right, so let's model some walls. But before we do that, I want to quickly talk to you about this 3D cursor. So in Blender, this 3D cursor is very important. That's how we bring in objects. So wherever you place it, that's where the object is going to go. But to move it, you can either click on this icon, you can place it anywhere, or you can be more precise by going over here and clicking on this icon. And here you have more options. You can get to the same window by pressing N on your keyboard. So it's the same thing to show it. Press N to get rid of it, and you get the idea. But we're going to go to this view tab and we can adjust 3D cursor in here. You can move X, Y, and Z. So you can be more precise. You can type any value you want. So it's awesome. So you can click again anywhere. By the way, press N to get rid of it. So now let's say I wanted to bring in a sphere. So I click here and I want the sphere to be there. So you can go to add and then go to mesh and boom, sphere drops in there, which is really handy. So we can click again here, but instead of traveling all the way to add, I can use a quick keyboard shortcut that does the same thing, and you can do it anywhere. So I can press Shift A and we have, the same options. We can go to mesh and click on cube. Boom, it drops it right where our 3D cursor is at. So I kind of want to explain it real quick because we're going to use it in this project. But before we do that, let's clean up our outliner here. We're going to create a new collection. So there's a button for it right here, but you don't see it. If you hover over this area and click on the middle mouse button and kind of move it to the left, you'll see the button. So click on that button, it creates a new collection. We're going to double click. We're going to call this one Scene Objects. Okay, so I want to make sure that's selected. Then we're going to go and select this LED panel. Well, make sure you have the move tool selected and then shift select that one. So we basically selecting two middle ones. We're going to press tab key to go into edit mode, and we're going to select faces, press 3 or click on this icon. So select this face, shift select that one. And now I want for my 3D cursor to be in the center of my selected faces. How can I do that? Now you can kind of maybe select this and kind of eyeball it and maybe activate snapping and see if you can be close, but there's a much quicker way to do that. All you have to do is press Shift S on your keyboard, and then you have all of these options, and you can say cursor to selected. When you click on that, cursor will drop right there to the center of our selected faces, which is very handy. I mean, you can do that for like edges. You can select this edge, make sure you select the move tool, right? Select this edge, and you can do Shift S, cursor, boom, it drops right there. You can select this edge, Shift S. So it's very handy. Now, the beautiful thing about this, right, we're going to select again those faces, Shift S, cursor. Now I can go into object mode by pressing tab key, and our cursor is still there. So now I can again select the scene objects. We're going to bring in a new plane right there. And to do that, we're going to press Shift A, mash plane, and it drops it right where I need it to be. Awesome. So this plane is going to be our wall. We're going to double click on it. We're going to call this one walls. That's great, but we're going to keep altering it. So we're going to select it, hit tab to go into edit mode, R to rotate it, and then X to only rotate it on X axis. So it kind of locks it in on X. And then you can use the numpad. If you have the numpad in your keyboard, just type 90, and then it will move it 90 on X. Or if you don't have numpads, you can just go back here and adjust it in here if you want. But the beautiful thing about collections, you can turn them off at any time, and now you kind of have a better way to work. You can see exactly what you're doing here. So we're going to select this face, hit S to scale, and we can press X to only scale on X. And then we're going to type 8 on our numpad, boom. And as you can see, it does it in here. So you can either do it with your numpad or you can do it in here. So then you can adjust it on Z. We're going to say we want to move it up to 4. And essentially we have the same size plane here. That's our LED panels. Basically, it's this exact same size. So we're going to turn it off. We're going to subdivide it, right click, subdivide. And we're going to select this face. We're going to invert the selection by pressing Control I. And we're going to get rid of these selected faces by pressing X, faces, delete, boom. And now we're basically going to model this. And then later we're going to use a mirror modifier to, get this side and also Z side. All right, so let's do this. Press 2 on your keyboard to get this edge mode. So we're going to select this edge, press E to extrude. And the cool thing about extruding, you can do the same thing. You can lock it in on certain axes. You can say only do it on X, and it's going to move on X, or you can say Y. It's going to move it on Y, but we want X. And then I'm going to type 0.1 on my numpad. Great. So next, we're going to Alt-click on one edge. It's going to select all of our bottom edges. And then we're going to E extrude on Z. And I'm going to type -0.1. Okay, so we have something interesting. So now we're going to select both of these edges. Just Alt-click on one. It's going to select all of them. And we're going to extrude. Press E to extrude on X. Press X. And then 2 on numpad. Again, you can do it in here if you want. It's just so much quicker doing it with keyboard. So I'm going to press E, extrude on Y, and we're going to type 10. Then E, extrude on X, and we're going to type 20. Very quick. So as you can see, we create something interesting here. Now I'm going to select all of these bottom edges by holding Alt and then clicking on one edge. When you do that, it's going to highlight all of them. So I'm going to extrude all of them by pressing E and then Z, and I'm going to type -1. So next, I'm going to insert some loop cuts. And to do that, we're going to press Control R, and we can move our middle mouse button to add more loops like this, and then press Enter twice. So Control R again, scroll twice. You can also adjust it in here as you want, but I'm going to select both of these loops, hold Alt, click on that, Shift Alt to add on to that selection. So we selected both of these loops. We're going to press Control B to add bevel, and we're going to type 0.1. When you click away, you can keep altering this. We're going to say, let's do it width, and then we're going to say 0.1, make sure it's the same. Okay, so we're going to select this edge loop. So hold Alt on your keyboard, press down, and then Alt click on this edge, and we'll select the whole edge here, the whole loop. Very handy. I love this feature. So press Control B to bevel, and then press 0.2. So we're going to get the double of what we got there. So as you can see, 0.2 width, we're good to go. So now I'm going to go to face mode, press 3 or click on this icon. We're going to select this face and all the way to that face. So select the first one, hold down Control and click on this face, and it will automatically select everything in between. So once you have it selected, press E to extrude, and then we're going to say -5. So you can keep altering it in here if you want, but -5 is what I want. Next, I'm going to select all of these faces and I'm going to get rid of it. So select this face and then Control select the very last face that you want. Boom, it's going to select everything in between. Press X to delete the face. Boom, it's gone. And we're going to select this face right here. Control select that one. So it's going to select the whole loop here. We're going to extrude it to add a little lip. So press E to extrude, and we're going to extrude 0.1, I think. Yeah. That's good. So next, we're going to select this loop. So hold down Alt and kind of click on in between two faces like that. So it's going to select that. Then we're going to hold Shift and select this face and hold Control and select that face. Boom, it's going to add on to our selection. So hold Shift and then Control this one. And again, hold Shift for that one and that one. So we have the area selected. So these are going to be our lights, our wall lights. So we want to kind of like extrude it some. So I'm going to press Alt E to extrude faces along normals. So when you click on it, it's going to extrude it based on normals. By the way, let me undo this. Here's what I want to show you. You might be wondering, like, what is normals? How do I know? How is it extruding it like that? Well, if you want to see normals, you can go over here, click here, and you can barely see it, but right here is face normals. When you click on it, you can visually see them in your scene. As you can see, these faces are pointing that way, and these normals are pointing this way. And so when you say extrude along normals, so if you press Alt-E, extrude along normals, it's going to extrude based on those little things that are pointing to whatever, right? That's how it's going to extrude it. So we're going to go inward, and we're going to do something like 0.05. That's good. And we want to make sure that it's offset even. So make sure that's checked. All right. So we're going to do the same thing for that one. So we're going to click on in between any of these two faces, just Alt click, and it's going to select the whole, basically the whole bottom faces here. So it's going to select that loop. And then we're going to press Alt E to extrude. Again, make sure you extrude along normals. When you do that, as you can see, it extrudes it. We're going to type something like, let's do 0.5. And right away, you can see that it's not very even. It's kind of like messed up. But if you have this offset even checked, it's going to work just fine. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the normals. So I'm going to uncheck this, but you get the idea. So we're kind of there, but here's what I want to do. I also want to bevel this edge right here. So I'm going to go to edge mode, and we're going to press Alt and click on any of these edges. When you do that, it's going to highlight the whole edge loop here. And then we're going to press Control B to bevel, right? And if you move your middle mouse button, if you scroll on it, you can add more cuts, but something like this is fine, but we can keep altering it here. Make sure you have this set to width. And then in here, we're going to do 2. Okay, like that is good. And I do want to add more cuts or segments. So we're going to do something like 30. That's probably way too much, but just to be safe, I want to make sure it's smooth. All right. So that's really it as far as like modeling goes. Now, here's what happens when you extrude stuff. So for example, when you extrude things, you have all these faces in here kind of like left over. And if you're going to do like a mirror modifier, you want to make sure that all of these are gone, because if you don't, it's just going to create some problems with normals and all that stuff. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So what you want to do, you want to go to this X-ray mode. So now we can highlight everything. If you highlight things, it's going to highlight everything. In this case, we're just going to highlight these faces like that. Make sure they're selected. Then we're going to select, there's some up top here. So I'm just going to Shift select. Well, you don't even have to hold Shift. It's going to add on to it. So if you just select them, boom. Never mind, you do have to hold Shift. Make sure you hold Shift, boom. So now we have all of our faces selected on the edges that we don't need. And yeah, we're good to go. So now I can get out of this X-ray mode and press X to get rid of those faces. And now they're gone. We're good. So now we can do this. We can actually add some bevel. So I'm going to press Tab to go into object mode. And this is what we have. Now, as you can see, it's not very smooth. So we're going to press, just right click on it, and we're going to say shade smooth. Boom. And it's kind of crazy going. So we're going to go to normals, click on here and go to normals. and make sure auto smooth is checked. Now, once we have bevel, I think it's fine, but just to be safe, that's good. So it fixed it. Now we're going to add some bevel because right now it's too sharp, but when you have some bevel, it adds that nice little highlight around the edges. It kind of pops it a bit more. So select this, go to modifiers, and we're going to go and add a modifier called bevel. When you do that, you can see it already doing something interesting. So we're going to go and make sure we set this to width, and then limit method, let's set it to angle. And let's see, let's zoom in a bit. Let's set this to something like 0.01. That's probably enough. Okay, and we're going to add some segments, probably 5. Yeah, you can see before and after. It definitely gives you something interesting, like little highlights in here. Maybe even more. Let's do 0.02. Yeah, that's good. So before and after. Yeah, I like it. So once we have that, next what we want to do, we want to duplicate this to the left side and also to the top because it's only 1/4 of the whole thing. So to do that, we're going to use a mirror modifier, and we already have like our origin in the center, so it's going to work out perfect. So we're going to select this, we're going to go back to modifiers, and we're going to add a modifier called mirror, that one right there. When you click on it, you can see by default, it already mirrored it on X, but we also want to do the same thing on Z. All right, so let's model the floor and the ceiling. And before we do that, let's make sure we turn all of our collections back on. So this is what we have so far. So let's bring in a new plane for our floor. And right now 3D cursor is right there, which is totally fine. You can put it in the center of your origin, of the scene origin, whatever, by pressing Shift C. It'll drop it in the center. Or you can do Shift S again and make sure you go to cursor to world origin, and it'll do the same thing. So I'm going to press Shift A to bring in a new mesh. It's going to be a plane. That's going to be our floor. And then I'm going to, obviously it drops it right here in our scene objects. Make sure it's there. If it's not, just put it back into it. And then we're going to double click on it. We're going to call this one floor. And let's see, we're going to select it, hit tab to go into edit mode, hit S to scale. And as you're scaling, if you have numpad, press 30. And if you don't, just make sure you adjust it in here. All right, so that's our floor. I'm going to hit tab to get out of the edit mode. We're going to move it downwards. If you hold down control, you can kind of snap it. And right about there is fine. In fact, you can select this, go to properties here, and make sure on Z it's set to -1. All right, so we have our floor. I'm going to select it, press Shift D, and click away to duplicate it. As you can see, it created a duplicate. We're going to call this one ceiling, and we're going to move it up. Make sure you hold control to snap right here. That's good. So we have our ceiling. I'm going to change the size of it. So I'm going to select this, hit tab to go into edit mode, hit S, and then we're going to scale on Y. Okay, and as we're scaling on Y, use the numpad, we're going to press 0.5. And if you don't, just make sure it says 0.5 on Y here. Then hit tab to get out of it and move it back. If you press control, you can kind of snap it. Make sure it's at about, let's do 7 right here on Y, 7 meters. All right, so let's model our ceiling lights. And those ceiling lights will go over here on this side and also this side. So to do that, here's what we're going to do first. Make sure you select this plane, the ceiling, and then we're going to press Shift S, something we've done before. We're going to place cursor to selected object that we have right now. So this cursor will snap to our selected object, to that origin. So when you click on it, boom, it goes in there. So now we can bring in our light, and it's going to be placed right there. So our light is going to be a simple sphere. So I'm going to press Shift A. We're going to go to mesh and then click on this UV sphere. When you do that, it's going to place it right here, but we can alter our options in here. For radius, we're going to set it to 0.2. It's going to be very tiny. Now, if you have numpad, press period, and it's going to zoom right in. So I'm going to right click and make sure it's shade smooth. And then here's what we're going to do. We're going to select it. We're going to go to modifiers. We're going to add an array modifier. And as you can see, you can add more copies. We're going to do something like 10. And then we kind of offset this. You can see maybe like 4. That should be good. All right, so we are in object mode, but here's what I want to do next. I want to select this, go to edit mode, and then while I have everything selected, if it's not, press A, it's going to select everything. Then you can either, click on the move tool and move things like this, or you can also use a G keyboard shortcut. When you press G, it moves it everywhere, but when you say X, it's going to lock it in on X, and then you can type something like 13 on numpad. So it's going to place it right about here. Or you can just click away and adjust it in here. Whichever way you do it, it's up to you. But I'm going to type 13. That's exactly where I'm going to place it right here. So I'm going to press tab again to get out of the edit mode into object mode. So now we have the origin right here, and we have lights on this side, but I want to have those lights on this side as well. And to do that, it's a simple fix. We're going to make sure it's selected, go to modifiers, and we're going to add a mirror modifier. So click on that, and it will, by default, it will mirror it on X like this. All right, so to wrap up this video on modeling, we're going to set up the camera. But before we do that, I just realized that I forgot to rename these ceiling lights. So make sure you go to the outliner here. We're going to call this one ceiling lights. All right, I feel so much better now. So next, we're going to go to this camera and light collection, and we're going to select our camera. We're going to go to this transform properties. We're going to set the X, Y, and Z location to 0, and the same thing for rotation. Basically, zero everything out to where it goes in the center of our origin here. So next, I want to take this 3D cursor and put it in the center of our origin as well by using a keyboard shortcut, Shift-C. Then it drops it right here. And while I have this collection selected, I'm going to press Shift-A, and we're going to bring in a new empty. Click on this. You can use any of them, but I'm going to use this first one, this plane. And now we have this empty in here. And if you don't know what an empty is, it's just an object that we can use for our own good. You can't really see it in the final render. It's just something we use when we rig things. Anyway, it's similar to like a null in After Effects. So we're going to select this empty. We're going to call this one camera control. And I want this camera to be the child of this camera control. So to do that, you can click and drag and move it into there, but you can't really do that unless you hold down Shift on your keyboard. When you do that, then you can drop it inside of this null right here. So as you can see, now we have this camera control null. When you move on it, it moves the camera. So it is the parent of this child, which is a camera. All right, so next, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select this camera. We're going to move it on Y right about here. So let's see where on Y, we're going to do something like -13. And then we're going to look up. Right now it's looking down. So rotation, we're going to pull this up to like 90. And I'm going to press 0 to see what we're looking at. So that's what we're looking at right now. This is the camera view, 0. If you don't have numpad, so it's 0 on the numpad, you can just press squiggly, like tilde, I think that's what it's called, tilde on the keyboard. If you click on it, you'll see this pie menu. Then you can just go over here to the left, view camera, and make sure you do that. Boom, then it goes to camera. All right, so that's how you get there. So in here, we're going to go and select our camera. We're going to go to the camera options, and here we're going to go to focal length. We're going to play with it. As you can see, we want to make it huge. You know, if you're making sports graphics, you want to make things big. And so we're going to set it to something like 20. That's good. We're going to select the parent, the camera control. We're going to go to transform properties, and we're going to move it on Z to maybe like 3. Something like that is good. Then we're going to go back to camera, and let's do this. We're going to play with the Y rotation, maybe like set it to something like 5. We're going to tilt it some. Now we're looking straight at it. You want to look at it from the bottom, like you want to make things look bigger. So you want to drop the camera a little bit lower so that this area appears very big. So that's exactly what we're going to do, but we're going to go to camera control for that. And on X rotation, we're going to either move it up or down, but we want to go down. We want to make this thing look really big. So maybe like 10, that should be good. So really, that is it for camera position. So we're done with modeling. We're done with camera position. And in the next video, we're going to talk about light and material. So I'll see you there.